All right, and we're live. Welcome everyone to the first buddy read on Already Overbooked. Tonight, I'm going to be going over In the Heart of the Sea by Nathaniel Philbrick. This is the true story of the Essex crew and the inspiration for the classic Moby Dick. Tonight, I'm honored to have an amazing booktuber on the channel, someone who I'm happy to call a friend, a man who devours books like they're midnight snacks, who drops daily videos like they're hot off the press, and still finds time to juggle dad duties like a pro. I'm speaking of the one and only Kevin Towle from Kevin Towle Reads. Hey, Kevin, how's it going, buddy?
Wow, that's some big shoes to fill there.
Man, you fill those very easily. You fill those very easily.
It's a good thing I wear a size 15, I guess. Right. Wow.
Oh, man. Rowdy in the house. How's it going, buddy?
It's not a live stream without Rowdy, it seems like the last 2 months.
And we also got a few other people jumping in. Buddy Ted. How's it going, Ted?
Ted.
All right. So let's I want to jump in, do a quick synopsis of the book, and then we can kind of just like start talking about our thoughts about it and go from there. So
sounds good.
Here's what I have written down, and you let me know if I'm missing anything.
Okay.
We have set in 1819. The book follows the ill-fated voyage of the whale ship Essex, which was attacked and sunk by a massive sperm whale in the Pacific Ocean. Stranded thousands of miles from land, the crew was left adrift in a small whaleboats, battling starvation, dehydration, and the elements. As their situation became more desperate, they were forced to make unimaginable choices, including resorting to cannibalism to survive. Philbrick went through and constructed his book using firsthand accounts from the perspective of the cabin boy and the first mate. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got from a quick synopsis. So I think that hit all the high marks. So let's jump in with, what was your initial thoughts on the book, Kevin? What do you think of In the Heart of the Sea?
Well, I loved it. I get a lot of grief for not reading a lot of nonfiction, and this one was, of the nonfiction I've read, probably one of my up there is one of my favorites. I thought it read really quick for a nonfiction. Nonfiction can get a little dense depending on the subject matter, but this one was great. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of different things. Obviously, you learn about whaling, you learn about Nantucket, you learn about families, history, lineage, genealogy, the chosen families of the whaling industry in Nantucket, and kind of how they covet, their whaling industry out there, and just the times, learning about the different, the ships, what you call the jib and everything, the roping and, first mate, second mate, how the politics worked back even in the 1800s when it came to who's going to crew and what. I thought was really interesting. And then obviously the processing of whales, like back then, that was something to behold. I mean, I did not expect some of the details. And so, yeah, I thought that was all really great. I thought it was a great setup to the actual story of what takes place, with their whaling west of, South America, and what ends up happening with the ship. And then obviously, kind of like, to me, the second part of it, when probably the meat of it really was, so to speak, is the whole thing of what happens when they're in the actual whaling ships, and after they're capsized, and they're out there for like 90 days, basically at sea and trying to survive. I thought that was fantastic. So I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, man. This was one of the best nonfiction books that I've read in a while, that kept me hooked.
Yeah.
Kept me hooked. Yeah. All right. And and what I really liked about it was the amount of times that I like cringe because of the details they put in this book. Like, it goes deep on how they cut open the whales and go through the whaling in general. But then even on the second half of the book, when the cannibalism starts, they don't shy over what they
No,
did. It was
no.
very detailed and very cringy at some points, but it was very, very well written, and like you said, very, very quick read, and kept me engaged the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think Philbrick did a really good job with keeping it so real, but not
Mhm.
getting to the point of being grotesque in the
Mhm.
sense he was very. I think we did a very good job of maintaining kind of an honorability about the situation, about the story, and the truths, without getting to like turn it into kind of a gore story, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely not gory, but enough where it was like the beginning of it, even the
Mm.
beginning of the book, like the that was probably one of the gruesome parts where it did like so the book starts out for anyone who didn't read it, it jumps to like the end of the book at the beginning. It kind of shows two individuals being rescued in their boat, and they pull up, and these guys are eating their shipmates in the boat on each side of the boat, like they're ravaged dogs going through and eating the meat, the bone marrow
Yeah.
off the bones. So it
Yeah.
jumps from that and then jumps to the history of whaling and leads up back to that same part at the end of the book. It was good, man. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
So we have some few friends that jumped on. Let's so we got Brian. What's up, man? My favorite fellow human. And then it looks like Ted did read the book, so it's definitely gets the readers into the atmosphere. Yeah, I will have to agree. It definitely pulls you into those time periods.
Hmm.
We have Professor X. How's it going, Professor?
Yeah.
Oh man, my fellow Eagle brother right there. My fellow Eagle brother. There's only two of us. There's only two of us on BookTube. There's only two of us.
That's surprising to me.
Oh man. Um, so what surprised you most about the whaling industry from the book?
Well, I think two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, like, and I guess in retrospect now, I mean, because this book is staying with me. I finished it. What was it, Tuesday? I think maybe I finished it Tuesday of this week, but it's staying with me these past days. So the two things that I was really shocked by was when they get out there and they're looking for, there she blows, is you're looking for the blowhole. That's how they were spotting whales out there amongst the people up in, the mast. But when they spot a pod of whales and they go out in these wooden boats, 25-foot whaling boats is what they call them, they're chasing whales, like, and they're like right, like right there so they can harpoon them. And so that in and of itself is just like you're putting yourself out there, like, this it's an 80-ton whale, like, that's just crazy to me. That was the big thing. And so then they harpoon them, they wear the thing out, and then they get it up, have it breached, and then they're basically just stabbing it, and they're basically trying to get, cut its, get to its heart, cut its oxygen off type thing. And then it's, once it's done, it dies, then they're basically towing that thing to process that thing on the
Mm-hmm.
ship. And by processing it, they're cutting it up into
Mm-hmm.
usable, chunks, and they're after the oil, the blubber, everything. I thought it was really interesting too, like, a section of blubber, like a 2-foot section was like 40 pounds. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just the amount of barrels that they're getting of the oil was crazy. I also thought it was really at the end of the book when they were talking about the museum and they had that beach whale that comes on and they start processing on Nantucket. When they put the skull into the ocean to let all of the sea creatures, pick it clean, so to speak, and left it out there in a cage, after they brought that in or brought it to the shed, I think it was a shed they actually had it, were keeping it at, it was still oozing oil,
Mm-hmm.
the skull, like months later. It just, it was really interesting, the processing, how they actually captured the thing just in the 1800s. I mean, it was just, can you imagine? I mean, being out there and
Well,
I'd be scared to
well, they were
death.
out there for years, which that's the
Yes.
part that was the biggest part that I
Yes.
thought was shocking. It was like it wasn't. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 4 months, 4 months they were at home for every 3+ years they were at sea.
Right.
So it's like they were gone, and it
Right.
was the and it went through and described how the city was ran without all these guys around. It was the women held up the fort,
Right.
and I think they even said like most of the women were um, overly educated compared to their their whale harpooning men that were out there just like in
Right.
the ocean by
Right.
themselves. So
Right.
I did like hearing the how everything was set up from a economics perspective. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then the amount of extra boats they need to go through and have. I thought that was very interesting too, because they said they needed, on average, it was four, and then the Essex, I think, only had two extra boats, one or
Right.
two. I can't
Yeah.
recall. Yeah.
That was one of and that was one of the parts of the book that I really enjoyed too, is that you can kind of like see these little breadcrumbs that are happening.
Hmm.
Like, this was a bad decision, this is going to affect you down the road. And
Hmm.
so when Pollard, the captain, wanted to go into the storm, and they lose some of those whaling boats, they lose those extra boats, they all knew that that was a problem. Because
Hmm.
when you're out there, if the whale, I mean, because you're right there next to this huge
Hmm.
mammal, and if it breaks that boat, you know, you're not always guaranteed to repair it. And so they have to have those extras. Although, otherwise, you don't come back with the resource that they're paying you to come back with. No one makes money. And so that
Hmm.
was a huge thing. The other thing too you pointed out was how much provisions they had to carry on that
Hmm.
ship. It was ungodly. And I just thought, like, and then you're going to add 1,500 barrels of
Hmm.
oil from the whale. Like, how are we going to put all that? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wish. Yeah, I was going through. I wish they'd kind of described. They did throw some pictures in the book about what
Right.
the boat looked like, but I, even with the pictures, I still couldn't imagine how everything was set up.
Right.
Exactly what you were saying. Like, this is where everyone slept. This is where the food, and then this is where all the barrels were.
Right.
Because before the attack, we got details on them killing one whale,
Hmm.
and then there was kind of a little tiny time jump that they killed an extra 11. So it was
Right.
like they had a total of 12, and it was like that's a lot of
Right.
barrel.
Right.
And they discussed like, hey, like all the men are getting exhausted. Do we head back? And they were like, no, we're going to keep it going. And
Another,
which
yeah,
another
yeah,
breadcrumb. And
yeah.
that's the part that I marked up my book. I marked it up. All the blues at the top are all the times that I think the captain made bad decisions.
Yeah.
And it was just like back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you're like, when you mentioned they went to the storm, I was like, that's a bad idea. He was like, oh, we'll see how the boat does. I'm like, this used to be your boat. Like, you've been on this boat before. You know exactly how this boat's set up. So what are we
Right.
doing? And
Right.
then he decided, he was like, maybe we need to go back. We're not that far away. We can go back. And then he listened to his crew, who were
Right.
like, no, 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 no. We're going to stay because people are going to quit. And
Right.
then it's going to take us a while to recruit more people. Let's just keep going. And I'm like,
Right.
you're the captain, man. Be the leader. Say, no, this is what we're doing.
Right.
And go back. You
Yeah.
know, it
Yeah.
was
I
one
thought
thing.
that was a really good one that you pointed out. Like,
Mhm.
when they wanted to go to one of the islands or one of the coasts that they were, I think it was South America. They were like, don't do it because these guys will jump ship and you're not guaranteed to find hands.
Mhm.
And then they were always very leery. Is it an offlander or is it a Nantucket person?
Mhm.
Because they put such prestige in the Nantucket people versus the
Mhm.
off islanders. And so that was I thought that was one of the wiser decisions, because that just, to me, it was like, you probably should, but you run the risk of not having a crew, and then you're stalled, and then time, you can't make up time. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, there's only so many resources you can have on your boat because they stopped a few times. It's not like they were on the ocean the whole
Right.
time. They made
Right.
stops, and they went to one island. I can't remember where they went to, and they tried to buy more boats. They're like, well, we'll get more boats there, and there was one that was a
Right.
rundown boat, and they're like, oh, I guess we'll take this one. It's better than nothing.
That was
then
another breadcrumb. It was like, okay, that's gonna screw you up later.
right.
Yeah.
So we have someone. Tim jumped on, and Tim's getting ready to jump out, but he did ask if either of us have read The Sea Wolf by Jack London. I have not. Have you
No, I
read?
haven't. I want to, but yeah, I have not.
I'm putting this on my list here. The Sea Wolf. Okay, I have it here, Tim. I will go through and take a look at this. I've not heard of The Sea Wolf.
Yeah,
So
I have it in one of my omnibus collections from Jack London. Yeah. Yeah.
So what other breadcrumbs? So we have the storm. We have the boats being messed up and not going with your gut. You're the captain. You're the boss. This is the first time you're a captain of a ship and you're letting the crew decide to take over. The warning signs of, hey, you get off the island and you can't get extra boats. The where were they? Where they that dude, give me a second. I have it here. Was it Thomas Chappell, one of the boat steerers, burned down that island?
Yeah.
I thought that was another, like, I was like, dude, he's playing a prank and he's burning a whole island down. He did it on purpose. He's like, I'm gonna light this over here and just
that was
act
bad.
like there's a fire, and then lit the whole thing on fire. That was,
then just change the ecosystem there, like just burned everything, especially during and it was during like a dry season, and yeah, and that was when they were going for turtles, weren't they? Yeah, that was another thing that was interesting too. So turtles, another commodity, and so they go see these huge turtles. They're 80 pounds, 70 pounds, like that. And okay, so I have a question about that because I don't remember or recalling it being explained. So I know that they put them on their back, tied them on their back, and then they would haul them. And there were so many, these hands were so many they had to go throughout a day. And it was very tiring work. You had coral and everything else you're trying to navigate. Once you get it, you got to haul it back on, all that jazz. So, okay, let's talk tortoises. So they have the shell is not flat, right? You're not going to put. I'm assuming they don't kill them because you don't want to starve them. You don't want the meat to be. Because I remember also they had a couple on the deck too that were live.
They had some on the deck. They also had pigs. Also,
right?
They did some trading for some pigs too. Yeah.
So are you putting the curved part against your back? Because I don't want that mouth anywhere near my body.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because it also has like hooks on their hands, don't they? So it's like it would mess. Yeah, you're putting the opposite of the Ninja Turtle on your back.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, so that's going to be like one hell of a carry. It's 80 pounds. You got the curved part into your back. Like, wow.
And these guys, so I ended up writing down. So part of my notes I was taking because I was curious, because the book starts out with telling us Thomas is 14. So I was like, how old's the rest of the dudes on the boat? And I went through and wrote them down. All of them, except one, is between the ages of 14 and 29.
Yeah.
Most of them are 16, 17-year-old kids, except Richard Peterson was 60. He was the old man on the boat.
He was the old African American guy that that part of the story.
Yeah, he was the old man. He was the only one that was on the older side. But everyone else was in their 20s. So yeah, they were young, they were strong, they didn't care about nothing.
Yeah, the Peterson guy, that part of the story, that was kind of that part. So when that book flips to that section, the survival section, I was just like so engaged because I like a lot about that. I like, as a former athlete, it's like, okay, how do you persevere? How do you push your body beyond what it can take? Now, we're talking about survival, the lethargy of everyone, as they're starving, dehydrated, everything else. And so the Peterson thing, when he supposedly steals, the hardtack or steals the water, I can't remember exactly what it was, and he was the one that was saying prayers and everything, and they didn't have the gumption, to do what they should have done, punish and then what ends up happening to him, that one got me, so, but yeah, that whole section of that book, from I guess you don't really call it the cannibalism section, but it's the survival section.
It was pretty much the cannibalism
I
section.
know. But
It was the cannibalism section. So
that part of the book was my favorite.
Ryan Skeffington, how's it going, buddy? But yeah, no, it was yeah, it got nuts. It got nuts on that section because it was back to back and people were dropping like flies.
Yeah.
People were dropping like flies. Yeah, it was all right. Before we jump into cannibalism, talking about them ripping each other up. Was there anything else from a before the whaling incident, before the boat got hit by the whale? Was there anything else that you caught that was a Pollard, like, hey, this is probably a bad idea?
There was one other thing. What was it? There was one other thing. I should have wrote it down. Well, obviously, go ahead.
I was going to say jump in. So Brian went, I thought Pollard's often had the right instincts, but unfortunately he repeatedly allowed himself to be outvoted. I think he just doesn't know how to be a leader.
No, his leadership skills were terrible.
He was afraid to lead. And if you're a captain of a boat, if you're a captain of a team, if you're a captain of, and if you're a leader in a position, you need to take control. You need to be the boss. So I feel like they put him in that job. He should have not been there at all. I agree. He had the right instincts, but he kept making the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
For sure. For sure.
And then Ted said, speaking of on the captain letting his men make the call, he would have been wise to remember that mutiny was a real threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he had a lot of opportunities to turn around. And that was kind of my thought with the book. Multiple times. And then there was he met up with the old captain, because so how he got the job. So speaking of how he got moved up, he was the first mate, and the person above him was such a good captain, they got promoted to a bigger ship. So they were like, all right, well then we're going to move everybody up. And then that's what they went through and did. And they were like, all right, you're the next in line, go, instead of who's the best qualified. And then that's how they ended up in that big whale spot where they ended up getting attacked, because he listened to the old captain. He stopped and like, hey, there's a spot that
was off of Chile, wasn't it? They were around that area, and he's basically go west, 3,000 miles, follow like where the equator is, and there's whales everywhere.
Yeah.
And that ends up being,
the downfall.
Doom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pollard was one of those characters, I don't know, like there's definitely a difference between him in the movie versus him in the book. For sure. But in the book, Pollard was one of those kind of just like Brian said, Ted said, he just let everyone basically just overrule him and didn't stand fast. Like you said, he had many times to make a decision that was going to be the best. Even back then, it was about economics to a degree. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, it's in the movie. So speaking of the movie, I wasn't a fan. I didn't like it. I think they changed the characters. They made him more of a cocky guy.
Yes.
Rather than him being how I felt him in the book, of being very submissive. And that's what I felt of. If everyone agreed, he'd be like, okay, I'm making the right decision. Or maybe not submissive. Maybe that's not the best word, but he second guessed himself a lot. Of like, I know this is the right thing. And then one or two other people go, I don't think we should do it. Like, oh, okay, I guess we won't do that. Instead of standing up for himself. In the movie, he just like was, I'm the boss kind of persona. And I'm like, that's not how he was in the book at all. Yeah,
the movie really placated towards Chase, the first mate, and they played them kind of against each other because he's the offlander. He's the man that has the name and the prestige as an Nantucketer. Dad got him, the job because of who he is and being a Pollard. And, question for you too, by the way, in the book, Folgers, is that the Folgers from coffee? That was one of the prestigious names mentioned in the book. Folgers was one. Yes.
Is it Folgers coffee? Is that?
I could swore that because I remember kind of sticking that in my head, like that's interesting. Because Nickerson was a name that was synonymous as well, but it was Boston, like an offlander, and so I that stuck in my mind as well. I know a Nickerson, he's from the Boston area, and so I thought that was really interesting. It may just be you know coincidence, but I could have swore Folgers was a name
Mhm.
mentioned.
James A. Folger, a native of Nantucket, helped found the Folger Coffee Company in
That's what
San
I
Francisco,
figured.
California. Yep.
But yeah,
So,
they played, like,
huh.
back to your question, Josh. They played against in the movie Chase and Pollard way, because really in the movie it was really about Chase,
Hmm.
you know, and so I thought that was really interesting. Where in another part of the movie versus the book was, I thought the movie was all about the whale attack.
Hmm.
It was about the whale. Like they kept seeing the whale. In the book, I think the whale was like, it wasn't as prevalent. That happens. It capsizes the ship. And so, but it wasn't after that. It was a survival story. The whale's not chasing them per se.
No, it didn't chase them, but they did. They were attacked twice.
They
So they
were
were
attacked
attacked,
twice.
but that
Right.
was a completely different whale. So it
Right.
wasn't like that one whale was like, I destroyed this boat. Now I'm going to chase these people down, like what they did in
Right.
the movie. Yeah.
And then they had a shark attack. Then wasn't there one part where Pollard, they had an orca or something that came
Hmm.
out, and so after that, I mean, it was just, okay, how are we going to survive? How can we get water? How can we, ration the hardtack, ration the water, and then they're out, and then it's like we got to draw lots type thing. In
Hmm.
the movie, like Chris Hemsworth, who plays Chase, he keeps seeing this whale, like, and he's like, this whale's after us. This whale's got a mind of its own type thing. And I think the movie needed that visual. But then
Hmm.
the other kind of distinction I really thought is, in the book, it was more about the survival. In the movie, that is a big component as well, but it's more like they overlook some things, like in the not really the afterward, but the end. So in the book, you get to hear about Chase keep going back out, keeps getting remarried.
Hmm.
He's married like four more times, has more kids, is hardly seeing his kids grow up. In the book, you don't, or the movie, you don't get that at all.
Hmm.
You get this, like, he made it back, he gives her a kiss, the girl, Phoebe Ann or whatever her name was, like, here she is, and then, hey, we're great. Well, in the book, he keeps going back out, and he finally is like, after his third or fourth time, he's like 4 years old, and he's like, hey, I'm finally done.
Hmm. Yeah. There
And
was.
in the movie, he becomes that merchant captain or something like that, and so
Hmm.
he's going to be around home more, kind of thing. It was, yeah. I mean, Howard had to have something that was going to hook people, and the whale, was the thing. But yeah,
Yeah, I think for the movie, it was good for like a visual thing of, all right, we see the
right,
whale. The whale's constantly like,
right,
you actually see the evil coming after them the whole
right,
time and having. But I felt like the more psychological stuff in the book
right.
was good and then also them. So after they got hit by the whale, um, so that was another big difference between the book and the movie. In the movie, it was, we got to hurry up and get supplies because everything's going to blow up. And that's not what happened in the book at all. There was
No,
no rush. It was, let's take our time, let's make a plan. And then they were bickering back and forth of, do we go to this island where they eat people, or do we go this way where they don't? And I felt like that was very, like, I was like,
there's
you should have
another
went to the
mistake.
cannibal island. You
Yeah,
should have went to the cannibal island.
yeah, yeah. Because yeah, it was one of those, like, do we go to this and maybe lose some people, like, that want to jump off because we had a couple scares before they make it around Cape Horn, like you talked about earlier,
Mhm.
or, and at this point, like, do we go to, was it Tahiti or whatever, where they eat
Mhm.
people, and then what ends up happening? They end up
Mhm.
eating each other.
Yeah.
It was kind
Yeah.
of it was kind of ironical, but
Hmm.
yeah.
So after that, so they ended up connecting each other, and like there were some situations that happened, but then they ended up on that island. That
Well,
island, let me see. How big
they
was that
were
island? I wrote it
yeah,
down.
they were by the French Polynesians, Easter Island. There was a couple different places. Um, the Maldives, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they were so The island, so I wrote this down. The island was 6 miles long and 3 miles wide. That was it. It was a little tiny island. So, curious. You're a character, you're on the boat, you're there. Would you have stayed on the island like half the crew did? Or would you have been like, you know what? I'm going to risk it and jump back in the ocean and hopefully figure out a way? What would you do? What have you done?
If I was in the 1800s, yeah, I
Yeah, it
would.
was you.
I would have first explored the island. What kind of resources do we have? I think after being in a boat for, at that point they're in a boat for weeks on end, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was a month at least. Um, I definitely would have probably stayed the night and tried to really see what's going on. But then again, like how much energy in a survival situation, it's like how is the energy expenditure worth the reward type thing, and two. So like, there's that. I would probably at least would have stayed a day, if not two, to make sure. You know, that was the other thing too. Like, I'm trying to answer your question without going in a tangent, but did you pick up on the fact like rain collection was not a huge like they had the sails like and they were
Mm-hmm.
trying to sail the sun. Obviously, you got to do that, but rain collection was just they talked about it maybe one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're at the equator. I probably the seasonality. You're probably not gonna get a lot of rain. But yeah, that was one of the things I was like, why aren't they trying to collect rain? Type thing. But
Yeah, they didn't do that much, and then they decided it was a good idea to start drinking blood. So
yeah,
that was an awesome idea. And they started eating, old rotten bread. That was fun and getting them sick. And
yeah,
then on top of all of that, which I thought this was interesting, they were all addicted to tobacco. So they were having
yes,
withdrawals from nicotine on
yes,
top of all of this. So it's like just
yeah.
one thing after another that these men were going through. But yeah, I would have stayed on the island personally. Like when I got to that part and people were like, yeah, we're not going. I'm like, I would have been one of those guys. Be like,
Yeah.
I'm
I
staying.
think I would have stayed for a while,
Mm-hmm.
seen what it was about, and then I would have been like, I'm going back to the sea. I mean, I would think like, yeah, I would think like you're out there like in the 1800s, like how often are you going to see something? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. That's just me, but
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people that were on the island survived.
I know because Chase they sent a boat back,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so
Yeah. They it was rough for them too, but I don't know. If I was weeks in the ocean dealing with all that, I don't know. I would have stayed on the island for a little while to try to get my bearings straight to figure out exactly where I was. Because that was another thing. They thought they were going this way, but they were going that way, going farther out away from everything. And it was
right.
like,
Well, and that was the other thing too. Like navigation would have been rough in those little
mm-hmm,
boats trying to make shift something. I also too. I don't know if you did this, but when they were talking about the different knots, I'm like, okay, well, how fast is that? We talking about how fast the whale was going and
mm-hmm,
everything else, and the whale or the whale was 80 ton. They estimated the boat, the Essex, was 240. It was 3 times its size.
mm-hmm,
But they were talking about the knots, like the whale was
mm-hmm.
going like 6 knots or 3 knots. I looked up the knots. That's not very fast, but I
Yeah.
guess just the sheer mass, And so when they were talking about drifting and everything else, like they weren't going fast, so that it just takes forever to get
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And like you said, it's hard to navigate. Everything looks the same. There's no, you can't say, well, okay, well, I see this place in the distance. We're going to need to go this way, and yeah, everything looks the same. You'd
Right.
just be going in circles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was. Yeah. There's no way. There's no way. I would have stayed. I would have stayed. There's no like. I don't know. I would have. I would have rather risk it and die on an island than be stuck at sea. That's just my preference. If I had a choice between one of the two, so
Yeah.
that's what I would do.
I would think
So,
too. Obviously, if you're a seaman like these guys, you're gonna how sick do you get? You don't have Dramamine. Like
mhm.
You can't get sick. If you start, throwing up, then you're going to dehydrate even faster. You're going to be dead. So, yeah. But have you ever fasted before? I mean, can
Yes.
you imagine someone today in our modern society trying to go through that? I mean, I think they wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, because they said in here how much they were having food-wise. It was barely anything.
Yeah, it was like 400, 500 calories a day, and maybe like a half a cup of water.
For a day.
For a day.
For a day. Yep. And then it was rough.
Makes me thirsty.
It makes you think. Well, I've been drinking water because it's thinking about what these guys are going through. It was rough. So from the cannibal side, did you find it hard to read about them cutting people up and eating them, or was that kind of just like interesting?
It was interesting. I knew to expect it. I knew a little bit about the premise of the book, even though I haven't read the book, so I was expecting it. Philbrick did a great job explaining it. I think he kept, it honorable in the way he told the tale in that regard. So, but he was detailed enough to talk about, not only the moral kind of side of it, but the ethical side of it, the psychology around it all, whether can you eat another person. But I really, I liked how they talked about how they processed it, and the fact that they were doing it in a confined quarter in this 25-foot bow, that in of itself made me was like, holy crap. I mean, because that to me was one of the things that was like, hey, we're going to cut this guy up now and he's, 8 feet away. Yeah.
Ted kills me.
First, just eating people, second people eating people.
Listen, Ted. I don't know. I guess it's a thing. I guess
if your third buddy reads some kind of Dexter story, I'm gonna start worrying about you too.
It's not. But that's funny. That's a good catch, Ted. I appreciate you, buddy.
No Silence of the Lambs for you.
Oh,
no.
All right. Well, I got to cancel that one.
What'd you think? What about the cannibalism? Did that gross you out? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I kind of knew what was going to happen. So when I went and picked up the book, it was at the local bookstore, and the bookstore owner loves this book. Loves it. And she said she's hasn't stopped talking about cannibalism since she read the book. And I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of cannibalism. She went, oh yeah, there's a lot. So I knew going in there was going to be a good bit. I did find a few parts of it like, oh man, that's intense. But then I started thinking, if I was in that situation, would I go through and eat people to survive? And I feel like that's a hard pill to swallow of going through. It's like, all right, do I starve to death or do you eat somebody? So I don't know. There was a lot of moral questions I was asking myself throughout this book of, would I do this? Would I do that? But I feel like it's different times, different. I
don't think we're equipped to answer that question.
Yeah.
I understand where your thought process is going here. It's like we're in a modern time where we can go grab a drink. We can go grab we're not equipped. Like if we were coming from, okay, we're off grid, we do this. Like, yeah, you might be in a better position to be able to answer that question. You want to think, I don't know how, I can't speak for you, but you want to think that if push comes to shove, that you're going to do what you can to survive.
Yeah.
But like, you're going to start chomping on someone's liver and eating their bones.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I would say no. But then another part of me is like, maybe I would. So I don't know. I agree. I feel like it's a hard question to go through and try to figure out. But yeah, I didn't think it was too rough. There was some parts I was like, man, this is intense. But it wasn't anything where I was like, oh, I can't continue reading the book. So it was good. I thought it was good and well done and not too gory. It was enough to keep me like, oh my goodness, this is intense, but not enough where I'm like, man, this is too much. So I thought it was well written.
Yeah,
from that aspect.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I really think, back to that question, like, I think at first we're going to resist. Like, I'm not to that point. I'm not, no. But I think, and even in the story, like, you can see, like, the transformation of the degradation of what they're going through, both physically and their just kind of emotional psyche. Like, yeah, bring it on. Like, I mean, they were licking their hands after the heart attack was gone, because they were licking the sales for the salt, like, which was just going to exacerbate the problems. But it, yeah. And then did you thought it was interesting too? The African Americans are the ones that are, yeah,
Dying off. Yeah,
they're dying
dying off.
off.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones being eaten.
Mm-hmm.
Which, and then they kind of threw out some Angel Keys studies and what which I thought were fascinating too.
Mm-hmm.
But the African American body compared to the Caucasian body doesn't have the fat content. It's different. So without the fat, it became harder to process eating, muscle mass and everything in the human organs. So
Mm-hmm.
that became problematic, because they were eating the African Americans, which they didn't know if was that because there weren't Nantucket people, kind of thing. That was all hinted at. But when you're eating a human being and you don't have the fat content, it was harder to process, especially when you're
Mm-hmm.
not getting water to. So I'm assuming they became constipated, I mean, but yeah, I thought that was interesting too. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because what there was only 8 people that lived, which include the people on the island. So there was
mhm,
only a handful of people that were actually on the boats that actually survived. Everyone
right,
else was eaten, except the first few people were not eaten. They were buried at sea.
right,
So that was before things got crazy. But yeah, there was
right.
only a handful of people. I think maybe there was 4, I think, on the island that survived and 4 on the boats, if I'm
Mhm,
not mistaken.
mhm.
Um, so that's because there was like 20 something guys originally on the boat. So it was just crazy thinking like only 8 made it through. So it's and then most of them went back to whaling afterward, which another thing I thought was crazy. They were
Yeah,
just like they got back, they got healthy, and they're like, all right, we got to go back to work. And it was like crazy to me of you barely survived
yep,
and you're okay with going back.
yep. And they put Pollard back on a boat, and then
Mhm.
that happens. Was it Hawaii area? It happens, and he's like, I'm unlucky.
Mhm.
Like, I've got a curse. Like, I'm done. But then, like we talked about, Chase
Mhm.
he's going back out there and back out there and back out
Multiple times,
there.
yeah.
He comes home and I got a new wife, and he's back out there. Yeah, I guess when you only know one thing, for that time period, like that's what you know. I really
Mhm.
like, though. I don't know how you thought about this. So, what did you think about Pollard in Nantucket post his second attempt? He comes back, and the reception he gets, what he ends up doing with the rest of his life, type thing. What did you think of that?
Refresh my memory. I don't
So
recall.
he comes back and basically becomes like the town cop, the town
Oh yeah,
police,
yeah.
and he's kind of treated in some respect. He's kind of given a lot of respect, and I thought that was interesting.
Appreciate you, Brian. Brian got the facts coming. Appreciate you, man. 5 on the boats, 3 on the island. I got
He's a walking Britannica.
love him, man. He's awesome. Yeah, I forgot about that part to be honest with you, because I read
Yeah,
this. So I read it read it weeks ago. Um, so yeah, I completely forgot. I knew everyone went back, but I forgot he became a cop on
yeah,
the island. Completely forgot about that because he had a bad reputation for a while. Because it wasn't just him thinking he was bad luck. The town thought he was bad luck
right.
after the Essex situation.
Well, and then they had that huge fire.
Hmm.
And because he was like really close to, and his house stood for a long time, but it didn't catch fire and all that. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked it, obviously, but you had the story about how the whaling works, the ships, they go out, the mistakes, the bad decision making, then they get capsized, then you have how to survive, and then it's like post what happens with some of these key characters. I thought was was a really interesting way to set it all up. And
Hmm.
so,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was
recommendation for you? You would highly recommend? Oh yeah.
I would recommend. So what I would say, if you can get through the introduction of the preface of the book, where them two of the individuals being found on the boat and that scene, if you can get through that and be like, this is fine, you'll be fine the rest of the book. I feel like that, that was kind of like a lead up of, hey, it's going to get here. So if you get to that and you're fine, continue. I think it's very insightful,
Yeah.
of the how things are set up. Like, a big fan again, of the economics. I thought that was so cool. And then the amount of work that they had to go through to get the oil for these whales. I found it very intense, and the amount of chaos that these guys did to these whales, but then they're very pacifist people, which I thought was very interesting, because they're Quakers, like, we don't hurt people, we don't do anything out there, but then they get to the whales and like, this is money. And
Yeah.
it's like, they didn't see it as animals, they just saw it as, this is my money to
Right.
go through. So I felt that was very interesting, that people were able to have that kind of switch,
Right.
so I thought that was pretty interesting on the historical part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is one of the books that Steve Donahue does, his like starter pack for nonfiction, and it was one of the ones that he suggested. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, this one was one of my favorite nonfiction reads for sure. So, have
So do
you
you
have
have
you read nonfiction before?
Oh yeah, I read nonfiction all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's
Okay.
mostly military,
Okay.
historical. That's
Okay.
usually the route that I go through and read. I just those uh those are the stories that really hit me. Okay, there's a few where I'm like, because a lot of people know the normal wars that people go through, but it's like, do you know some of the battles that people
Right.
actually go through, and the chaos some of these men have gone through? There's a multitude of books that I truly enjoy, and then some legendary, historical military heroes that are pretty modern day Jack Reachers. Like, there are people that's like, there's a guy named Roy Benitez. He was a Green Beret, and he was injured. Found out some of his men were behind enemy lines, so he jumped onto a helicopter with nothing but a knife, and they flew over and they said, hey, we can't get down, and he jumped off and ran, getting shot at, getting blown up to save his men with nothing but a knife. Like, this guy was a reacher, Rambo, and it's like, he blew up. They thought he was dead, and they were like zipping up the bag, and he was like, I'm still here. And it was like, this guy was unkillable, and it was such an intense story. I'll share you there's a few of them. There's a few like awesome heroes that if they did it in a movie for like, hey, this is what happens to Jack Reacher, you'd be like, all right, that's a little bit too much. But it was like, this guy actually like lived it, lived it.
Also, we could stay in our pajama pants and order fast food to be brought to us at our homes. God
Right,
love America.
right, right. Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
Ted, there's no eating people in the historical fiction. Oh my goodness. All right. Oh man, I've been not paying attention too much to the chat. Let me see. Oh, we got Margaret jumped on. Hey, Margaret.
Hello.
She said, oh, so that's the Kevin who does all the tags looks like. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's me. I got Q
the
coming on Tuesday.
the man, the myth, the legend. And then what Brian said, more facts. Little Brian, fun facts. The boat survivors were all Nantucketers. The island survivors were all white non. Huh, I didn't remember that part. That's good to
Yeah, I
know.
remember the speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not remember that part.
Yeah.
So, is there any other nonfictions you're thinking about jumping into after this one?
So I'm gonna read nonfiction November. I'm gonna read nonfiction again in November. I'm gonna read the Errol Flynn book that Thomas at McNulty Book Corral sent me.
Mm-hmm.
His telling of Errol Flynn. And then I want to read a nonfiction account about Da Vinci. and so
Okay.
I'm gonna read those two for November nonfiction. So yeah, I've got a couple others that again that were part of the Steve Donahue nonfiction starter pack. I got a really huge book about Pearl Harbor that I want to read.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, those two for sure. For November nonfiction November reading event. So yeah, but hopefully, in my plan is once I get into the summer months, is it's going to be ripping through a lot of the serious stuff that I've been trying to get through. I mean, I've been doing so many buddy reads. Now, been great, but it's been a busy start to the year.
Yeah. Well, not only that, you do the amount of videos you toss out is so impressive to me because it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I try to find the time, but then I start getting, so when I first started, I was like, I'm going to do 4 videos a week. And that lasted 2 weeks because I started seeing bags under my eyes. And I said, I can't. I'm dying. And so I'm tapping out. And then I'm seeing like there's you and there's a few other people that's like boom and killing it. And I'm just like, you guys are just machines over here.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It was a lot easier when it was just like I recorded on my phone and just post it, and it. I miss those days in that regard, but when I did the 58 in October last year, when I was doing like two a day, it
Hmm.
was extreme. Like now, I say every week in my weekly wrap, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to slow down. I was saying it for like 3 months, and I think my sweet spot's like 5 a week.
Hmm.
And I keep putting out like 9 and 10.
Yeah. Well, do you count that? You can always say you're doing 5, but then the tags don't really count.
The
The tags
tag-
don't count. They don't count towards that number. The tags just fun. The tags are fun.
my playlist on tags is approaching 50.
Whew,
and I,
man.
and I just and I really got active with them in the last like 3 months. Like it's crazy. Like,
Hmm.
but the beauty of the reason I like the tags is because I feel like it engages everyone,
Hmm.
and so there's these. I always felt like when I first started in March of last year that people supported me, and so I always feel like I need to support them back. And so if I can find a way where I can do something fun on my channel and also you know pay it forward to others, then that's why I do it. Now there's tags that I get tagged in that one I don't do because it it either does not a really good fit for me, or I feel like I'm
Hmm.
going to be talking about the same books over and over again,
Hmm.
or those type of things. So there's tags I don't do, but there's a lot of times like I want to do that one, and so yeah. And then Logan has his own playlist because of me,
Yeah.
toll tags, and
Yeah. I
yeah.
love it. They like, and he's been knocking them out every day
Oh,
this
because he
week.
got way behind. He got
You
behind.
got
He was
it was
sick.
like it was like
Yeah,
boom, 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 and I was
yeah,
laughing
yeah.
like
He was
every day. I'm
sick.
like, all right, I'm waiting for the other one. Where's the next one? Here it comes. You know?
He told me he's like I recorded like 5 in one day because I was behind, and he's like I'm thinking about just launching them all like in over the course of a few days. I'm like go for it, you
Hmm.
know.
No, I love them. I love them. Yeah. See, my favorite kind of tags to do. So I've done a handful of them, but the ones where you show a book, I started catching myself going, all right, if I'm going to do this next one, am I going to be showing the same books over and over again? I don't
Right,
know. So I kind of don't want to do that. I liked the one that like to get to know you a little bit. Well, let me show a little bit of your personality, and that seems like what you've been leaning into a lot
yeah,
with those tags, and that's why I'm like, all right, I can kind of get back into doing tags again because I like that because it's going to be
right,
different. It's not going to be, hey, I showed in the heart of the sea last book tag for this prompt. I'm going to do another one of in the
right.
heart of the sea for this prompt. It's just I felt I was being repetitive.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I felt like I was talking about Dresden Files, or I was talking about
Hmm.
this book, this short story book, over and over again. So yeah, you know I've done 3 originals. I've created 3. You were the one, Josh, that was like, hey, you need to create your own, and I
Hmm.
was like, oh, I'd never be good at that. I'm proud of the 3. The funny thing
Oh.
is the recent one, the perfect booktuber, where I talk about, okay, create your own.
Hmm.
Here's the channels and the attributes that I enjoy, whether it's editing skills or professionalism, and what create your own perfect booktuber I thought was great because it was a way to showcase other channels.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. Plus, you get to learn a little bit about what I look for in a
Mm-hmm.
channel. But it hasn't really taken off. I was actually really shocked by that. Whereas the reading ticks tag took off, and then the other one I did, the first one really took off, and a lot of people were doing it. But I don't know if people felt bad because, like, hey, when you promote other channels and you leave off some of your other friends, like, they were gonna feel slighted, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's always that too. But as I've talked about this too ad nauseum, and I know you probably do the same thing. When I do all these tags, I try to circulate through the
Mm-hmm.
250 subscribers I got to keep people
Mm-hmm.
engaged. Now I know there's a handful of people like, I don't want tagged. Don't tag me. I'm not doing
Mm-hmm.
them, which is fine. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's how I'd roll.
I have a laundry list of
Yeah.
people. So it's like all these people either do like I've done a tag once where I'm like, all right, they'll do what they're willing to do, and then I have a list of people like they never have done it. They do their weekly wrap up
Mm-hmm.
videos. So I'm like, I'm not going to waste tagging you guys.
Right.
It's fine. But yeah, I go through and try to filter through different people, and to kind of mix it up so I'm not pestering the same
Yeah.
people if they're
Right.
not gonna do a tag. And that's the thing. I'm like, I'm not gonna bother you if
Right.
this is not your thing, which is it's all good. But yeah, I need to get some more do some more. So I have some ideas. So I tested the water with my last one of
Mm-hmm.
doing because I brought it up to my wife and I said, I'm thinking about doing me talking to myself with the tag. And she was like, I don't know if that's going to be, I don't know if that's going to be a good one. And I said, I don't know. It might just plummet, but I was like, Kevin will like it. Kevin
I
will
know.
think it's entertaining. I was like, so if I can entertain Kevin,
Yeah.
then it'll be worth it if I get just one view of Kevin going like, I like it. So
Yeah.
it was, I have a few other ideas because that one did pretty well for my channel. So I'm like, I might do I got a few other ridiculous ideas I want to go through and do from a tag perspective. So
And have you? I like it when people do something that's funny, and
mhm.
so you know that I would enjoy, kind of that, and I do that kind of like my "What Are You Reading Wednesday" with this evil Kevin thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not creative at all, so I'm just winging it. But there is people out there that are doing some hilarious things in these tags that I think are just genius. Um, yeah. I was talking about this one the other day. This channel, Dr. Cranky Pants Reads. He has a channel. His name's Nick, and he has a channel where he did a tag a while back. It was absolutely genius. It was. Let me see here. It was like a matchmaker.
Yes, I know exactly what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
posted it on
yeah.
my channel. I
Hmm.
posted it on my channel. It was hilarious.
Hmm.
Like it was like a production. And it
Yeah,
was just
and a
it
lot
was
of
like a
his
little,
videos are like
yeah, it is crazy
that.
how
Mhm.
good he is. Yeah.
All right, we got a question from Margaret. Um, are you at all curious on who does your tags?
Does he watch and follow the
Mhm.
path? Absolutely. I usually, if you do a tag, one of my original tags, I will post it out there for sure.
Mhm.
I keep count as well.
Mhm.
I think one of them I got up to like 55 different people did it. And I had people I was telling my wife, I had people in Europe, I had people in South America, I had people in Australia. I was like, they're all over. And I thought it was crazy. I thought it was so fun. And so, yeah, I think the recent one I did, the reading ticks tags up to like 25 people now. And so, yeah, I always post it and kind of keep track to see who's all doing it. Now, I will say this too, Margaret. I noticed this, and this is going to be part of my live stream on Sunday. Well, I've noticed on YouTube some issues. There's been a lot of people like commenting, and it's like, hey, my comments went away. And I've
Mhm.
noticed that. I've noticed it myself, commenting on other people's
Mhm.
videos as well. But another thing I've noticed is that there's been people tag me and it
Mhm.
doesn't give you notification.
Mhm.
And it doesn't happen every time, it's intermittent. But I caught a couple people, like I'm channels I never heard of, I'm not subscribed to until I found it, but they did the reading ticks tag. And I just happened to be scrolling through my feed and like, oh, there it is. And so like I didn't know that I was even tagged. And so you don't always get the notification alarm on the bell that you're tagged. And so I've been trying to be cognizant of that, as I try to follow, these tags to her question. So, but yeah, I definitely keep track.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. Like if I see a tag, I usually go through and click on it and watch it, and then I have to look in the description. I'm like, oh, I was tagged in this one. I didn't get a notification. I was like, I need to make sure I add it to my list. But it's the same thing. I miss out on a lot, and there's been a few times where my comments disappear, which I still don't understand why. It's not like I don't think I've ever said anything completely off the wall too crazy yet.
No,
So,
and it's not like, Being Lamb will comment on, my videos, and like, it's nothing, that's obscene or anything like that. It's just comment like, hey, I read that book too, or hey, you should check this out. And he's like, hey, my comment disappeared. And I've noticed it on multiple people, and myself included. And so, because I've had people say, hey, I tagged you in this because I wanted your feedback. And I'm like, well, I did. And then I go there and it's gone. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand the YouTube algorithm yet. It's definitely,
it's a global issue, some kind of bug, I'm assuming. So.
Oh man, how's it going, buddy? And then we also Elaine.
Oh man,
Elaine.
That's two characters, Brian and Elaine.
And then Miss Molly. How's it going, Molly? Have you read Have you read Molly's book? So she's an indie author. No. I think she'd be right up your alley.
Oh, really?
She wrote an amazing zombie.
Is this the one Rowdy was talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did a review on the channel a while ago, but it's Dark Bloom. It's really good. It's really good. Her character work is very well done. I highly recommend you checking that out. And everyone that's watching this, check out Molly's book. That was Molly paid me $2 to go through, so Molly owed me $2 for.
Wow, you get a rip on every time you promote.
I get a nickel. So it's stacking up, Molly. It's stacking up. So what are you reading now, man? What is there a current book you're going through and reading?
I'm trying to finish.
I can't. It is not. Okay. I hear you, Margaret. I'm always promoting people eating stuff. It happens. All right, let's keep going. What are you reading? What are you reading?
I'm trying to read the final book of Dandelion Dynasty. I was supposed to finish this in December, and here we are, and I think I'm on page like 800 and some, and I got like 250 pages, and I want to get it done. It's one of those things, like, I'm enjoying it, so I'm not trying to rush it, but I'm to the point, like, I got to get to some of this other stuff, and I don't know. I was in these, like we talked about before, I'm really into shorter books. These huge books are just killing me.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of why I need to take a break for this month, and take a break from reading bigger books. I think I'm gonna read like 10 books this month, but it's like they're all shorter. So it's like I can read 4 of these books and equals 1 Durfee book. So it's like.
And I'm getting ready to buddy read Monte Cristo.
Oh, you are?
April and May. Colonel Mustard in the Library, DG, and I are going to buddy read that over 2 months. And so, but that's going to be my last big one for the year, I'm afraid. That's
on my list. So I ended up finding I bought it, but it's like I can't just commit to reading it. It's gonna be on the shelf for a while. I want to read it. I think I read it a long time ago. I can't remember if I did, but I know I've seen the movie countless times. So I'm excited to watch you guys talk about it, and then maybe it'll encourage me to go through and jump into it.
It's a big one. It's 1,200 pages.
Yeah. It's a thick one. It's a thick one.
Thank the Lord we're doing 2 months, because there's.
Are you doing like what you did with Lonesome Dove. You doing like
We haven't come up with a formula, but I think we're probably going to do something along the line. We might just read the whole thing and just talk it, do a live stream and talk about it. But we haven't finalized it yet, and she had a health scare at the beginning of the year, and so she wasn't sure if she was going to continue, do it. And I'm like, let's do it, and she's a nice lady, and so I definitely want to help support her, and I wanted to read the book anyways, so which is how all these buddy reads kind of come together.
Yeah. I got a handful of them coming up, and then so I have it to the first half of the year, and then I'm going to decide if I want to continue with the buddy read avenue or buddy read big books. I think that's going to be the difference. I think I'm going to cut back and maybe do buddy read shorter books, because this was nice. The Heart of the Sea, it was something 2 days, 3 days I could go through and knock it out. It wasn't a big massive book to go through, but I got a few coming up that are like big boys, so it's going to be fun, and I'm really hoping I like them. That's the only part about grabbing big books. It's like, man, doing a buddy read, I'm going to have to force myself to go through and read it if I like it or not. So that's kind of what makes me nervous.
And everyone was doing it, I did it too, like, here's the 10 big books I'm reading next year, and it's like, I'm not sticking with that. Sorry. I'm gonna read several of them, don't get me wrong, but yeah. And are we doing a buddy read of Rising Sun?
Yes, we're doing Rising Sun, you, me, Logan, I think Sam, I think Brian. I don't know, there's like every time I turn around there's another person on it.
Yeah, so, I've read it like 3 times. It's great.
Oh, I haven't read it yet. I haven't read it at all. I don't know. I got it, and I'm going to wait until it's next month.
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
I think we're doing it in April.
Yeah.
But that one's a short one. It's a Crichton book, so I can't.
Yeah, it's a quick read thriller. Yeah.
So it's going to be a good one. So that one's going to be fun.
Yeah, there's a movie out about it too.
Oh, I didn't.
Sean Connery.
Huh. Same name.
Yeah, Rising Sun. Yeah, I think it's Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes, maybe. I think.
Huh.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, I think.
From '93.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a good book. It really is. Michael Crichton's one of my favorite. I mean, I could read Michael Crichton all year long. I really enjoy his stuff. That's the other thing too, Josh. I don't know how you feel, and you get. That's the one thing about BookTube is you get on here, and it's the next thing you know, it's like, oh, I got to read that. I got to read that. I got to read that. And
well, I was telling you before, I'm like, I all next month is reading what other people recommended to me, and then it's the book that you recommended, and you keep talking about, like, oh, okay, I got to read the 87 Precinct. I have to read it. I have to read it now. But jumping into some of this, no, I do not want to read that. Y'all have a lot of fun. I do not want to read. No, thank you though. I appreciate it. I will 100% watch you guys talk about that book, but I know before I jump in, that is a no-go for me.
That is the romantasy fantasy thing. Okay, so Eric Wag did a video recently. He was one of the indie authors that I picked up his books off of Amazon recently. He did a video about this a couple days ago where he was talking about, so he writes sword and sorcery, big into sword and sorcery fantasy stuff, and so old school stuff. Now, when you go into like Amazon's top list, everything that's fantasy, it's this romantasy stuff, which is not like, it's a subset of fantasy, but it's not like the sword and sorcery, like dragons. It's got dragons too, but it's not.
There's dragons in this, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can understand where he was coming from. He wasn't like bashing romantasy. If that's your game, ACOTAR is your thing, then yeah, more power to you. I mean, I'm sure my daughter will read it, but it's not old school sword sorcery. It's not.
I'm all for people liking whatever books they like to read. I don't judge anyone by what they like.
Sure.
But I know I don't like hate reading books, and I feel like this is not. I'm not the target audience for romantasy. My sister, after 10 plus years is finally picking up a book. And like, I went to her house this past weekend and she got the first one and she was like, yeah, I'm reading this. I was like, awesome. I'm very happy for you. Let me know your thoughts once it's done. But there's no way. There's no way. No way I can. It's not my thing.
My wife's friends, they read some of those books where it's spicy. And so they know I do booktube and like, hey, you need to read this one. And so they'll send me text messages and I'm like, and I know it's like, hey, I know this is going to be one of those spice books, you know,
Yeah.
and I that's not going to happen, you know, but it's a nice little inside joke.
That's so funny. Mark, reach out to me, man. We can make it happen. We'll make it happen. Whatever you want. I got you. We'll do a buddy read. It'll be fun. And then look who showed up. His ears were ringing. As soon as we started talking about our buddy read,
it was the book tags that brought him here.
It was the book tags. That's what it was. He's like, it's the toll tags. It's the toll tags. So he came running. How's it going, Logan? I know you missed it. We talked about cannibalism for a good 45 minutes. It was fun talking about would we or would we not eat people. And then Tim McKay, man, welcome. Tim's a great guy. I still need to get his book. I need to go through and read it. See if there's any new people. Yeah. All right, good. So it's not just me. So yeah, Molly she didn't hate it as much as she thought she would. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see your thoughts when you go through and I watched that video. So I don't know.
Was there one book last year that you just were surprised? Like, why did people hype this up? Like you read and you're like, I don't understand why everyone's all about this book.
Yeah, I'm going to get hate. I'm going to get hate for this. I did not like the Brandon Sanderson's book, The Stormlight Archives. I didn't like them. I read book 1. It was good. It was good. I got a few chapters in the book 2, and I said, I'm done. The book 1 was too much. So I like Brandon Sanderson for a lot of his stuff, but I don't see the hype. I don't see the reason why that gets so much love around the book universe. I feel like there's so many better books out there than Stormlight Archive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about you?
If I go back to 2023, it would have been Babel by R.F. Kuang. I got like 250 pages and I'm like, this is just boring. You know, it was really interesting for like the first 200 pages. Then it was like, this is just turned into a bore fest. And so I DNF'd it. And then it was The Spirit Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. It was another book that I stopped reading. I was like, I don't understand why everyone's touting this as like the best new fantasy ever. It was just like, I don't know why. Yeah, I was just not impressed.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Babel. So I read Babel, did not like it. But I did like her other books, The Poppy Wars. Have you read The Poppy Wars?
No, I haven't. I know of them.
I enjoyed them, but that's one of those books that also got a lot of hate. So like I was like, I like this book, it's fun. And then I was like, let's see what everyone else is thinking. And I was like, oh, this gets hate. Okay, cool. Yeah. It's not a book for everybody, but I thought it was well done. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So was there any books that surprised you that you were like, oh man, this is actually good? So the opposite?
Ooh, yeah, Harry Potter. I was shocked. Tommyknockers by Stephen King. Mm-hmm. I was shocked. I'm like, why did I wait for either of those for so long? And they just were good. I can understand why some people hate Tommyknockers. I said this in my review. I still think my review of Tommyknockers is my best review, but the middle part of that book is kind of a slog as they talk about, you know, what happens. And I understand why people don't like that, but there is a point to it if you think about it overall. But I really enjoyed it. And then Harry Potter, I mean, it's YA, but it's good enough to where you can overlook that. Like, I was shocked, you know, but there's some people that again, can't separate artist and art and the
Mhm.
artistry about everything that's going on with her
Mhm.
as an author. And I understand that. And Sanderson's going to get that too soon.
Mhm.
You know, Gaiman's got it. You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, so it's in. And I was really liking Neil Gaiman too.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Good Omens is a great book.
Good Omens is good.
Good American Gods is a good book. Neverwhere is a good book.
I didn't like American Gods.
You didn't?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It could have been now. It could have been my mindset at the time. It was one of the first books that I read. So I started reading, like seriously reading in 2020, and I think it was like the fourth book I read in 2020. And I was like, I'm not feeling this book. So that was
So let me
5
ask
years
you
ago.
then. Let me ask you
Mhm.
before you move on. Fantasy wise, before you read American Gods, what kind of fantasy stuff had you read prior to that?
Yeah. Red Rising, and I saw
Okay.
Ted talk about Red Rising. He's too perfect because he is the narrator of the story. He's an unreliable narrator. Just had to mention that.
Hmm.
Unreliable narrator. But I loved Red Rising, so I read Red Rising. And then Michael J. Sullivan's Rhaenyra Chronicles. So I went through and read those. So I I got to keep in mind, I brand new in the reading. Never read Harry Potter. At the
Hmm.
time, I never read Lord of the Rings. So it's like I've read it now, but at the time, I've never read any of those. So I was like brand new in the reading fantasy. So yeah, when I read American Gods, I was like,
See
not my thing.
that's probably part of the reason for the dislike. So
Mm.
I've noticed with Gaiman, from what I've read, and I've read about 6 books of his, and I have more, but I've kind of just shelved them for now. But he is soft fantasy. Like he doesn't get into like a definitive magic system or definitive place. It's real soft touch. Like it's kind of like inferred fantasy. Like it's
Mhm.
inferred that this person can do something that's not what a normal human being can do, type thing. Or this is inferred that this is a place that's like through a portal, through a different, realm type thing. Whereas these other ones, it's concrete that you're in a different world, you're in a different place. You
Mhm.
have the ability to move things or do things with metals, and it's defined. Whereas Gaiman's, it's softer, and so that can be a blessing for people that want something different, or it could be like, hey, I just read this and it's really good. I like the fact that I knew I was on a different world, or I knew this
Mhm.
person could do magic stuff, and now this is kind of just whimsical, and it can be off-putting. So I can understand.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind going back because I know a lot of people really enjoy that book. But also, so I enjoyed A Good Omen, and that was something I read last year. So it was like 4 year difference between me trying him because I tried him
Hmm.
and I was like, I don't like him. I'm not reading any of his stuff. And then last year I read The Good Omen. I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah,
So I
it's
might need to go
hilarious.
back and try it again because I have a good amount of fantasy now under my belt from having that soft and hard magic system because I'm a huge Dresden fan now, and I don't think I would have been if I would have started out. I binged through those. Since you like Dresden Files, have you read Repairman Jack, the Repairman Jack
No,
series?
I know, and you've talked about it.
Oh my god, man! It is easily becoming one of my favorite series. Like it is, it's up there. It is. It has that perfect amount of Dresden feel with a supernatural aspect to it. It is so good, man. It's so good. I can't
I'm gonna
keep.
have to check it
I
out.
don't understand why it doesn't have that much praise. So it needs to be read. We need a.
Well, I don't think Dresden gives his praises either. Like it's phenomenal.
Mhm. Yeah, his
Like there's
character.
nothing like it.
His character development is amazing. It's
Yes.
so well done, and what I really like about it is he doesn't jump into the the world as big as it is after you get a few books in. He slowly puts you in there so you start getting comfortable with the world and the characters, and then it's like boom, getting bigger and bigger, and until you're halfway through the series, and you're just like, there's so much stuff going on, and it's awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean that's a great way to describe it because it happens so organically and
Mhm.
you don't feel overwhelmed, and you feel like each individual book has its own individual plot, but yet there's threads that
Mhm.
carry over and arcs that carry into and new characters and new conflicts, and it's just it's just grand, epic.
Mm-hmm.
I can't freaking wait for the next book.
When's that coming out? Next year or this
Yeah,
year?
I think
Next
it's
year.
I think it's next year. I've stopped doing the news thing because there's just been so much. You got Abercrombie coming out in May. You got this King book coming out in May. I've lost track. There's
Well,
a
so we got
Baldacci book coming out.
we have the King book and why can I not think of his son's name? Is tossing out a
Joe
book.
Hill.
Joe Hill's tossing out a book as well, the same time. So it's like literally like boom, boom, boom. There's going to be a bunch of them coming out.
And little spoiler, Joe Hill is one of the Saturday shorts for tomorrow. And I read from Full Throttle. Unbelievable short story. Best short story this year.
It is that I read another recent one of his that was really good too. That I just read it.
Yeah,
Just read it this year.
This one I read, it needs to like be redone and made into its own book. This premise is that good.
Mm-hmm. No, it's been a few years since I read it, and I thought it was amazing when I read it back then. Oh man, what was I can't remember the recent one that I read. It's on. It's for free if you have Kindle Unlimited. So I would go through if you have Kindle Unlimited. Check Joe Hill's short stories. This is another one that's out that just came out last year. Have you read Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee?
No.
Awesome. Do you like The Godfather?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I like Puzo. Yep.
Okay. Think of The Godfather, but in a fantasy setting, like soft fantasy. It's not too ridiculous. But it's pretty much a Godfather retelling. It is so well done. Highly recommend. And then look who showed up, Colonel Mustard. Another one. You were just talking about him.
I know.
Just talking about him.
Hello, Gigi.
Coming in hot. Okay, yes. Full recap. Boats, whales, cannibals, turtles. That's it. There's high level for you. It's all back. We're good. We're all caught up.
That was the Cliff Notes version.
That was the high level Cliff Notes. Mr. Cranky Pants.
Oh, I was just talking about him too. One of the funniest videos I've seen in a while. Nick is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's I was jealous. I'm still jealous that I didn't think of the therapist or the dating.
Yeah, the lady in that video was, I mean, she was fantastic too. Like it was like the mannerisms, like the little outtakes where he's outside talking like
it gave an Office feel. Like I was watching an episode of The Office where it was like them sitting out here. It was like, this is what I'm thinking. And I'm like, oh my, this is such a great idea. Like I love
very The
jealous.
Office too. And that, yeah, for sure. I felt like that was The Office.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of The Office. So huge fan of The Office, Seinfeld, and Always Sunny in Philadelphia are my three favorite shows that I go and watch.
Office, Seinfeld, House MD.
House MD, I've not seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen clips of House.
Yeah,
I've seen clips of
House MD. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, so if I'm not reading or anything, I'm rewatching Seinfeld for the 100th time over again. You know, it's I'm on the episode Kramer just went to Hollywood.
Oh, the keys.
The keys.
I'm telling you, I could quote Seinfeld. I've watched it so much, but yeah, the keys. He gets out there and they think he's the killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm starting that episode of is he? They think he's the killer. So I'm so excited.
That part where he's before he goes and he's in the coffee shop with George. He's like, "Do you ever yearn? You got any prospects at all? You got anything on the horizons?" And George's like, "No." He's like, "I like to get the daily news."
Oh man, it's such a good show.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. Look, I'm glad. I'm glad that was a good compliment for you, man. But no, he's fantastic. Anyone that doesn't watch Mr. Cranky Pants Reads is missing out. It is
for sure
top tier, man. Top tier stuff. Really do love watching all your videos.
Yeah, totally rewatchable.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
Mm-hmm.
rewatchable. It's one of those things like you're gonna catch things that you missed.
Well, it was so some of his stuff, like my wife doesn't watch booktube at all. Like she's not a big reader, she doesn't care. But his videos, I go through and I go, watch this, look at this is cool. This is cool stuff. So it's like I actually get her to watch like 30 seconds of videos. It's usually his videos.
Yeah.
Oh man. Keep expectations low. You crack me up, dude. You keep expectations low. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad. His videos are not amazing at all. So go in with very low expectations. No, they're amazing. It's great stuff. Great stuff. Oh man. So I'm
So what's next for you?
yeah, I have Knots and Crosses. Knots and Crosses. Someone told me to read this. I can't remember who told me to read this. Someone told me. So I got it. It was put on my list, but I forgot to put who told me to read it. So this one I'm starting tonight. So I'm going to go through and start this one. I taped my March video that should be coming out Monday of going over the 10 books. And then I have a 2 buddy reads in March. Nice. So I'm excited. So I have one with, I'm reading The Nemesis with Logan and Chris from Bearded Book Beast. That's going to be so much fun. It is book number 8, 9. I don't know, Logan, if he's still on. He binged them all of the Orphan X series. Have you read any Orphan X?
I read a couple Orphan. That's one of the group of books that I unhauled. I had like the first 5 or 6 in hardback. I got them at a used store. I read the first 2. I thought they were pretty good. And then, I unhauled them. And I shouldn't have. It was when I was like, I regret that. Especially since you did the versus thing. Smoke versus, no, don't tell me, Jack Carr. The character from Carr. Reese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
James
so
Reese.
I've read the first 2 Jack Carr, James Reese novels a long time ago. I have the first one in paperback back here. Another series I'd like to get to, some year.
So I've been reading his book since he put out the first one. Like every time he puts it out, I stop and I'm reading. I read his book, and they're all very, very well done. The James Reese series. The first 3 are my favorites. His last few, I've not been a huge fan of. It's like I see where he's leaning towards, where he's going, and I'm like, I don't know. If he drops the ball 2 more times for me, I'll still read them, but they're not gonna be me drop everything to pick up the next James Reese book.
The one aspect about him that I disliked, I thought the first couple of books were really good. I liked the plot, I liked the premise of everything. I liked him I liked Reese as a character. The one thing that I thought Carr did that was kind of overbloated is, I get that he comes from that background, but I do not need to know every little detail about guns, like every little thing. Like I get it. Like there's a select niche out there that really enjoys that, and that's fine. But yeah, it gets a little much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little heavy-handed.
Well, definitely during the fight scenes where there's been a few scenes where a house is being attacked by certain people and they pick up the weapons and they're describing what the weapon is. I'm like, you're in a gunfight. I don't care about the details. Just pick it up and start shooting. So yes, I kind of have to go over those, but it's I still enjoy it. But yeah, you definitely need to get back into Orphan X. Orphan X is a lot of fun, and Greg Hurwitz is awesome. He very cool guy. I've actually had the opportunity to talk with him a few times, and he was cool. And then he used to write Batman comics. So I don't know if you're a comic fan.
No, but I have some. Finally, after all these years.
So he's wrote some Batman comics. So I thought that was pretty cool stuff. So it's a lot of fun. So yeah. All right. Anything else going on, Kevin? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, tomorrow's Saturday Shorts, Sunday's the wrap up, and I'm live streaming Sunday for my 1 year. So that should
That's
be interesting. Gonna talk
so
about
exciting.
what went well, what I need to work on, what maybe be on the horizon.
What time's that on? You said Sunday. What time
I
Sunday?
think it's 5 Central, I think is what I have
5
set up
Central.
for. Let's fingers crossed that I set this up from a technology standpoint correctly. I have a bunch of people on there like, hey, well, where's Kevin?
Perfect. All right, that's perfect time. That's 6. That's 6 Eastern. Yeah, I'll definitely make it. But that's awesome, man. 1 year. That's crazy.
I know.
Crazy, man.
I mean, it's every time at 500 and some videos.
Well,
500 and some videos.
well, again, you're a machine. You're a machine. You put out like in October. You've put out more videos in October than I've put out since October.
No,
It's
that's
just
crazy.
like just killing it, killing it, killing it. But it's, man, this was a fun conversation. I had a lot
I
of
enjoyed
fun.
it.
I'm super excited for our next buddy read with Logan and the rest of the crew that
Yeah,
show up. So we'll definitely need to connect to do this again. But I appreciate
absolutely.
everyone in the chat jumping in. And if for some reason you do not watch or follow Kevin, you're missing out. Watch Kevin's videos. You'll notice very quickly he's the man. And then you're going to have to subscribe because you're going to have to see what else he puts out. So really appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you so much for jumping on. And I look forward to, our next endeavor.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.